Morning, Shabbat Shalom. Welcome again to another study. Today we're doing Ki Tetze, Ki Tetze, Ki Tetze, when you go. And it's a rehash about the different commandments, a lot of them that we've covered, some of them that will be expressed in a different way, and also when you go into battle. So we're going to talk a lot about warfare today. The way that things worked in those days as per warfare. And we are going to talk about a lot of the controversial verses. So this is an interesting one. I think it's got all the controversial verses in it. I think we cover almost everything that's controversial today. So this will be good. Let me shut this window. I'll just wait for that car to go. Yeah, I should shut the window. One moment. I live by train tracks, so it's kind of imperative that shut the window because we'll get interrupted by trains. Okay, so yeah, we are going to cover all the controversial verses. We're going to talk about grape and stoning of children. So if your children are listening, it might be a good one for you to not let them join in on this one. It's, we'll say 14 plus content, you know what I'm saying? Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us together. Thank you for this time that we get to spend together on your Sabbath, where we meet with you, we moed with you. Thank you for your appointed times where we can set aside time deliberately for you, that we can set apart and make holy this time to study your word together, to learn together, to grow together. I just want to thank you for every single person that comes here every week to listen. I appreciate you all so much. I want to lift up Bradley for his trip. I pray, Father, for safe travels for him. And I pray, Father, that you help him find the best shofar that is possible for him to find. I just want to pray, Father, over his mom and daughter, that they have the most wonderful, special days, and that you just bless them with health and good life. I want to pray, Father, over everyone on this podcast, everyone listening in the future, that they are free from all anxiety burdens, confusion, mental torment, fear. I pray that they have your perfect peace at all times. I pray, Father, that you give them your comfort, your peace, and your wisdom. I pray, Father, that you give them clarity on whatever choices they need to make in this life, clarity on the path that they are to take ahead. I pray, Father, that you release financial abundance to them. They have enough to cover every single bill that they have to cover. I pray, Father, that you, as we come into this time of the Jubilee, what I believe, Father, is your Jubilee year to come, I pray, Father, that you will release all debts. I pray, Father, that you will release anyone that's captive in debt. I pray that you will release them as they seek you, as they seek to do right, as they seek to do the right thing and pay best they can and manage their money best they can. I just pray, Father, that you just allow for a release of all debts. I pray that as we forgive others, that it is shown to us forgiveness as well. Father, I pray that you mend friendships that have been hurt by just different disagreements. I pray, Father, that you help us to forgive one another and walk in peace with one another always, never trying to tear each other down, never trying to hurt each other, but always trying to lift each other up and help each other. I want to pray, Father, just over our countries, Canada and the USA. I pray that your will be done, Father. I pray that your glory will be shown in these countries. I pray that you will show us if you would like us to vote, if you would not like us to vote, how you would like us to vote. I pray that you will rise up godly leaders in our communities. I pray that you will anoint godly leaders in our communities, locally, and then throughout the land. I pray, Father, that whatever land we are on will start to be reclaimed back to you, and that people will start to walk in your ways, in your truths and your commandments. I pray, Father, over the children. I pray over all the children, especially the ones who don't have parents helping them. The children that are being, raised by YouTube. I pray, Father, against identity confusion. I pray, Father, against the satanic agenda to confuse their identities, to confuse their thinking, to mutilate their bodies, to make them barren. I just want to pray, Father, over these children. I pray, Father, that you show them the truth. I pray, Father, that they come across truthful videos. I pray, Father, that when they are scrolling through their YouTubes or their TikToks and they're scrolling through things that they shouldn't be seeing, that they see things that they should see. They see the gospel. They see the truth. They see the truth of how the enemy is out to get them, to confuse them, to ruin their lives, to take their lives. And I pray, Father, that they just come across these videos constantly and they are woken up by them. I pray, Father, that you send your messenger angels out to all of these children who have been confused by this stuff, by this doctrine of demons, and just help them, Father. Just fight for them. In Yeshua's mighty name, I want to pray over our children. I pray, Father, that each one of our children neither veers to the right or to the left, but finds the narrow path that seeks after you constantly, that tears down every idol in their life. I pray for our health. I pray over everyone's health. I pray, Father, that you relieve all arthritis and bitterness in the bones. And I pray, Father, that you heal any heart valves, that you heal people's hearts and their veins and livers. I pray, Father, for healing of livers and kidneys. And I just pray, Father, that you kill every cancer cell within the sound of my voice right now. I pray, Father, that you will heal all of our people, that as you promised us in Deuteronomy 28, as we turn and walk in your ways, that you will heal us and you will heal our land. In Yeshua's mighty name, amen. Okay, let's get into it. Deuteronomy 21, verse 10. We're getting controversial right away. All right, here we go.
When you go out to war against your enemies, and the Lord your God gives them into your hand, and you take them captive, and you see among the captives a beautiful woman, and you desire to take her to be your wife, and you bring her home to your house, she shall shave her head and pare her nails. And she shall take off the clothes in which she was captured, and shall remain in your house, and lament her father and her mother a full month. After that you may go into her, and be her husband, and she shall be your wife. But if you no longer delight in her, you shall let her go where she wants. But you shall not sell her for money, nor shall you treat her as a slave, since you have humiliated her.
Okay, we need to backtrack because I'm assuming that most of you forgot the context from last week. So we got to go get the context, because without the context, this sounds really bad. So let's go back. I just got to open my program here. 1 second. I forgot to open it before. So the context is they are at war, and as they're conquering other cities, some of the cities, they offer peace terms. The cities that do not have horrific practices like sacrificing their children, etc., they offer peace terms. Okay, so they say, okay, do you want to be at peace with us, and you guys can just be under our rule, and you can live live in peace with us, right? Or they cannot accept the peace terms, and then they go and they fight. Okay, so in that process of warfare, it's obviously messy and ugly. Sorry, just trying to set up my computer is not looking like it's supposed to look. 1 second. Let's just do this. That's better. Deuteronomy. So we covered this last week, but I'm just going to revisit it quickly so that when people watch this video, they're not confused. Let's see. I think you have to go back to Deuteronomy 20. So if you want to read kind of the context of Deuteronomy 20 that we read last week, Deuteronomy 20:10, if you draw near a city to fight against it, offer terms of peace to it. So offer the peace first. And if it responds to you peacefully and opens to you, then all the people that are found in it shall do labor, forced labor, and serve you. Forced labor that sorry, I just want to look at this word. Task workers, they should be task workers and shall serve you. Avad, work for you. But if it makes no peace with you, then you shall but makes war against you, then you shall besiege it. When Jehovah your Elohim gives it into your hand, you shall put all its males to the sword, but the women and the little ones and the livestock and everything else in the city, the spoil you shall take plunder for yourselves. You shall enjoy the spoil of your enemies, which Jehovah your Elohim has given you. Thus you shall do to all the cities that are very far from you, the cities of which are not the nations here. Then there's certain cities that you don't leave anything, okay? But in the cities of these people that Jehovah your Elohim is giving you for an inheritance, you shall save alive nothing that breathes, but you shall devote them to complete destruction. The Hittites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, as Jehovah your Elohim has commanded, that they may not teach you to do according to their abominable practices, which they have done for their gods. And so you sin against Jehovah your Elohim. So their abominable practices include child sacrifice, all of that sort of stuff. And so why did these nations have to be completely destroyed? We talked about this last week. If you leave that and you start to intermarry with them, which is an ongoing problem, then those practices start to come back in. And then all of a sudden people are just doing abominable things again. And you just don't get rid of the evil ever. So what is the challenge? Getting rid of all the evil eventually, right? Okay, so when we go into this week's section, we start to talk about, okay, so a man fancies one of the female captives, which would normally be servants, right? Servants to the Israelites now. But he wants to marry her. Now, him and her getting married will actually be a better position for her to be in, okay? So she was just going to be a servant to the people. If he marries her, now she's an Israelite, she's part of the people, right? And so what is going on here? So a couple of things. It is assumed throughout the scripture, because of the marriage covenant, it's a covenant. There's a two-sided agreement. No matter what, when you're making a covenant, both sides are agreeing. It's not that he's grabbing her and saying, you're my wife now. You have to be my wife. They're making a covenant agreement, just like everyone else makes a covenant agreement. You can't have a one-sided covenant. If you have a one-sided covenant, then the other side's not agreeing. It's not going to work, right? There's a lot of people that look at the covenant with Jehovah that they have as a one-sided covenant, that he does all of it. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to be responsible for any of your behavior because he does it all. That's a one-sided covenant. A covenant is when two sides work together in agreement, right? So the morning understanding of that time for those people, they would shave their heads and they would do a mourning period. So they would always shave their heads and do a mourning period. Now, what's interesting about this as well, perhaps he sees her as beautiful, and when she shaves her head and is in mourning for a month, he might change his mind because maybe he's caught up in the moment with the warfare. The testosterone is running from the warfare, right? And he sees the beautiful woman. Okay, well, she's got to shave her head first. She's got to cry for a month first, and you got to have her in your house in that way, and maybe you won't see her in such a fanciful way after that period of time. And so that's also a protective measure. Like, think it through, you guys. Do you actually want to be married, or are you just kind of being impulsive, right? Because she's beautiful, right? So she goes through this period of mourning, and then if they do come together, then she's a wife now. And so she gets the wife treatment. So if he decides to send her away and divorce her, she still gets the wife treatment. She doesn't go back to being a servant. She stays in her position, right? So it's actually quite an upgrade for her. So a lot of people look at this and like, oh, the woman, she's being downtrodden on, but they don't understand the culture. And obviously in that culture too, things were very different than they are now. Women were not, especially, I think people don't realize that the Torah is very pro-woman in so many ways that were well ahead of its time. Women were not allowed to have a business without a man signing signing for it since I think it was 1988. I heard this week. So it was only in 1988 that a woman could go out and have her own business in her own name. Before that, you had to have a man sign for you to have a business. Okay. 1988. The Torah, which is how old, right? How old is the first Torah scroll that we have? Thousands of years old. The Torah says that if a woman doesn't have the father and the husband with the land, right? We go to the land rights back when we talked about Zephaniah's daughters, I think it was. They get land, right? If they don't have a father, they still get the land. They still can run their own land. Okay, so they were given land and land rights long before it would have been happening in our society. So I think what happens a lot is people read these and they don't understand. They haven't really thought, they get triggered by the wording and they haven't really thought of the actual context and the way that the world was then and how it was so different. I had the funniest thing happen. This man was debating with me about, how some people start the Sabbath in the morning and they say that it's the Sabbath starts in the day, right? Not something I want to get into debating today, but he was saying to me, well, one of his reasons why he was saying that he thinks the Sabbath starts in the morning is because the women went to Yeshua's tomb in the morning instead of at night. And I was like, I know you're a man now. I definitely know you're a man now because his profile that you couldn't really tell. And I said, I can tell you're a man just by that comment because any woman knows why they didn't go at night. This is a Roman ruled, the cave is guarded by Roman soldiers. Women are not going to go alone at night to the cave, the tomb by themselves at night. That's not so maybe, it's an interesting thing to talk about, but it's not a case. It's not something that's like hard and fast. Like this is a case that we can make. It's like, no, any woman knows you're not going to go at night because it's dangerous, right? You're not going to go Saturday night to a tomb in a Roman occupied territory. That's asking for trouble, right? So anyways, I thought it was funny. Just to take circumstantial evidence and make it something, whereas for me, the logic is they didn't go at night because it would have been dangerous, right? All right, so let's go into the inheritance rights of the firstborn. We're at verse 15, Deuteronomy 21:15.
If a man has two wives, the one loved and the other unloved, and both the loved and the unloved have borne him children, and if the firstborn son belongs to the unloved, then on the day when he assigns his possessions as an inheritance to his sons, he may not treat the son of the loved as the firstborn in preference to the son of the unloved, who is the firstborn. But he shall acknowledge the firstborn, the son of the unloved, by giving him a double portion of all that he has. For he is the firstfruits of his strength. The right of the firstborn is his. If a man has a stubborn and rebellious son who will not obey the voice of his father or the voice of his mother, and though they discipline him, will not listen to them, then his father and his mother shall take hold of him and bring him out to the elders of his city at the gate of the place where he lives. And they shall say to the elders of his city, this our son is stubborn and rebellious. He will not obey our voice. He is a glutton and a drunkard. Then all the men of the city shall stone him to death with stones. So you shall purge the evil from your midst, and all Israel shall hear and fear.
Okay, so this is obviously, okay, so firstborn, you don't show preference just because you love one wife more than the other. You do what the Torah says, right? Don't show partiality. We've covered partiality quite a bit in past studies. So the rebellious son, first of all, when you have this situation of someone who is rebellious, it's an ongoing rebellion. It's not like, okay, he's rebellious this one time, we drag him into the public square and we stone him. That's not how it would have been done. They had, remember when we talked a couple weeks ago that they had judges in place. So it would go before the elders of the city. So they go before, they'd have a court case. Now, you're dealing with a son. So first the father's disciplining him, saying you got to knock it off. Then you go to, you go to the elders, and then they're talking to him. You probably go to the priest first or whatever. So it's a process, right? And at any point in this time, this son can smarten up and stop being rebellious, right? So there's that understanding that he knows the Torah. They all learn the Torah, right? He knows that this is the outcome if he continues in his rebellion, right? So that stops a lot of it. And this is interesting because we were talking, I don't know if I was on TikTok live when I was talking about this. No, I don't think I was. So last night I saw on Facebook, this lady had posted on our community page. This lady had posted on our community page about these children who were chasing after a cat, and she could hear them, and they were saying, "Oh, I'm gonna stomp on this cat. I'm gonna squish its skull. I'm gonna pull off its tail." They were saying this horrible stuff about like what they wanted to do to this cat, and this woman heard, and she yelled at them, "Leave that cat alone!" And they turned and they started swearing at her, and she was shocked at how rebellious they were and how just horrible and awful these children were. And she had posted on our community page, like, people really need to like parent their children. Would children, if in my town we had this, like these children knew that if they continued in their rebellion, they continued doing their evil doing, that they would eventually end up before the elders of the city and have a possibility of the death penalty, would those children be acting in such a way? Probably not, right? And so people are like, "Oh, these Old Testament rules are so barbaric and blah blah blah." It's like, well, you guys have no rules, and look at what's happening in the world. The children have run amok, right? Sometimes the threat of something is enough to get you back in line. I grew up in the 80s. Things were very different then. All my mom had to say is, I'm going to tell your dad how you're behaving. And that was when he gets home. And that was enough. We smartened up. My brothers and I were like, okay, yeah, we smarten up, right? Because we know, right? But that's like, it's times have changed, right? Now there's no dads in the house, number one, for the most part. And, people just don't have any repercussions for a lot of what they do, right? So I think in the Jewish records, I think, if I recall correctly, don't quote me on this, but I believe in the Jewish records, this stoning of a child for being rebellious never actually took place. It was never needed to be done. The threat of it being a possibility, if you continued in your rebellion and your stubbornness, was enough to keep the children in line, that they would start walking correctly, that it never needed to be done. Okay, let's carry on. Verse 22.
And if a man has committed a crime punishable by death, and he is put to death, and you hang him on a tree, his body shall not remain all night on the tree, but you shall bury him the same day, for a hanged man is cursed by God. You shall not defile your land that the Lord your God is giving you for an inheritance.
I'm not going to really get into this verse. It's pretty obvious, but I do want to say it makes me think about how do Christians even understand the New Testament without knowing what the Torah says? Because most Christians don't actually know what the Torah says. And like, how do you even, like, you miss so much of the intricacy in the Gospels and all of that when you don't know the Torah. Like, you just miss, like, why did they have to get Yeshua off the tree? Why did they have to get him down? Right? Because of this. They didn't want to curse the land. And it was the Sabbath coming. 22, Deuteronomy 22, verse 1.
You shall not see your brother's ox or his sheep going astray and ignore them. You shall take them back to your brother. And if he does not live near you and you do not know who he is, you shall bring it home to your house, and it shall stay with you until your brother seeks it. Then you shall restore it to him. And you shall do the same with his donkey or with his garment or with any lost thing of your brother's, which he loses and you find. You may not ignore it. You shall not see your brother's donkey or his ox fallen down by the way and ignore them. You shall help him to lift them up again.
Yeah, this one's pretty obvious. If you just take care of each other, This is interesting though, because this is a note on Halakha. So when Yeshua is doing the Halakha of the Sabbath day, so Halakha is how you walk something out. Halakha in Hebrew means how you walk. How do you walk? So how do you walk out the commandment of the Sabbath day? And Yeshua was saying when he says, do you not, if you see your brother, your friend, your neighbor's ox in a ditch, do you not pull it out on the Sabbath day? Right? So what is he saying? He's saying this halakha of helping your brother, when he's in trouble, or helping your brother's ox when it's in a ditch, is higher than the rest on the Sabbath. Okay. So if you saw someone injured or someone with a flat tire on a snowy day on the Sabbath, you would stop and change their tire and help them so that they don't get hurt, they don't, so that they're not injured. So it is good to do good on the Sabbath, right? But he's not saying go to your office and do work and work on the Sabbath day. He's saying if you come across a situation where you need to do something, if you're an on-call ER doctor and there's an accident and they need you at the hospital, yes, go to the hospital and work. That saving life is more important than the rest on the Sabbath day, right? Saving life is always on the top, right? And that's what he's saying. This is the halakha. This is the order. It's okay to do good on the Sabbath, right?
A woman shall not wear a man's garment, nor shall a man put on a woman's cloak. For whoever does these things is an abomination to the Lord your God.
Okay, so this one is obviously very important these days. I don't know if you all know this, but it is a very huge Satanism thing to do cross-dressing. So to change your identity. Why is it satanic to try to change your identity? The reason it's satanic to try to change your identity, it means that you're not reverencing who created you, right? And so when they're convincing all these children now, and it's the children, they don't convince 40-year-olds to change their identity, right? They start with the youth who are still figuring out who they are. They're still figuring out what they're going to do with their lives. They're still figuring out. That's why they start with the youth. They start confusing them in the youth. If you go watch any animes, go watch what the children are watching. All of this gender bending is all in the children's shows. It's in the Roblox. It's in all these children's shows. Why are they going after the youth? Because that's when their minds are not settled yet. They don't have that strong identity yet. Why is it satanic? Well, you're trying to change your God-given, how God made you. You're not reverencing how God made you. You're not respecting how he made you, but you're trying to change it. You're trying to play God. That's why it is a huge satanic thing for them to do, right? That's why you see it all in Hollywood. Megan Fox, all of her sons apparently, or all of her daughters, all cross-dress. I don't know if they're sons or daughters. Obviously, I'm confused because she's confused. So she has them cross-dressing, right? And the whole point of this is it puts a spirit of confusion on people, and it confuses their identity. They no longer love themselves as they're made, right? So they start to hate how they're made. They start to hate themselves, and it just damages them. It's funny that it's I don't want to say funny. It's horrifying that it's not seen by the people that kind of endorse this sort of thing. It's like you're going to try to medically alter yourself to become something different rather than just learning to love who you are and how you were created. And for some reason, they see that as better. Like they see that as progress. That doesn't make any sense. Wouldn't it be better to love yourself how you are and just learn how to love yourself? Because if you try to change yourself constantly, think about these women that get like plastic surgery after plastic surgery after plastic surgery after plastic surgery, and then they start to look fake, right? And they all have the same face because they do the same filler in the same spots, and they all have the same face. If you think about that, it's like they start to look worse, right? They start to look like uncanny. They start to look worse, but there's no end to it. They get a blindness to it. So they put a little lip filler in and they get a blindness to it. So they put more in and they get blindness to it. And it's never enough because they don't love themselves, right? And so it's an ongoing cycle. And it's the same thing that happens with these children when they start to like, oh, well, if we just medically alter you, you're going to feel whole and complete. That's not how it works, right? They end up with medical problems. They end up with more issues. They end up still hating themselves, right? Because it didn't heal that they hate themselves already deep down, right? But let's just go into the nitty gritty. So some Christian groups use this verse to say that you can't, like a woman can't wear pants or a man. So, if you're in Scotland, men might wear a kilt, and that's the normal dress for a man, right? Back in Yeshua's day, everyone would wear long robes. That was the normal dress for a man. So it is culturally dependent. So women wearing pants now is common. My take on it is if you're trying to confuse people about what your gender is, or you're trying to confuse, like it's trying to like blur that line of what your gender is, that's when you get into that gray zone, right? So if you're trying to look like a woman and you're trying to twist that and make it look a certain way, so you got to think about culturally appropriate too. I like, even in Arab countries, the men wear long robes sometimes still and stuff. Yeah, so hopefully that makes sense. Let's go. I don't, and I don't think it's wrong. Like if a woman wants to wear a skirt all the time, um, and that's practical for her life, I don't think that's wrong. To have that conviction. But I do think it's one of those things that's kind of open to conviction. And I also find it very interesting that a lot of the churches that push this, that women need to wear skirts all the time, they're churches that don't even keep the Sabbath day. So they're pushing this command, but they're not keeping the Sabbath day. So that's kind of backwards to me. It's like a confused way of looking at it. But let's carry on. We're at verse 6.
If you come across a bird's nest in any tree or on the ground, with young ones or eggs, and the mother sitting on the young or on the eggs, you shall not take the mother with the young. You shall let the mother go, but the young you may take for yourself, that it may go well with you, and that you may live long.
I didn't realize what this verse confused me, but I just realized what it's about. So if you come across a bird's nest and you take the eggs and the mother, and you eat all of that, and you take the mother as well as the eggs, you're not going to get any more eggs, right? And I just realized that, oh yeah, it's actually quite obvious. Like if you eat the mom and the eggs, you're not going to have any more eggs. So leave the mom and then you'll have more eggs, so that it will be well with you and you may live long, because you're going to have food the next day if you don't eat everything. I don't know why I didn't pick up on that before. Verse 8.
When you build a new house, you shall make a parapet for your roof, that you may not bring the guilt of blood upon your house, if anyone should fall from it.
Okay, so parapet is like a fence on your roof. So what is the spirit of this verse? Make your property safe so that people aren't going to get injured on your property. If you have a high deck, put a nice railing so people don't fall off your deck and get hurt. Be responsible for the things that you own so people are not going to get hurt from them. If the brakes are going on your car and you're not sure if your brakes are working that well, don't drive your car, get your brakes fixed, right? Because you don't want to have an accident and cause death, right?
You shall not sow your vineyard with two kinds of seed, lest the whole yield be forfeited, the crop that you have sown, and the yield of the vineyard. You shall not plow with an ox and a donkey together. You shall not wear cloth of wool and linen mixed together.
Okay, don't sow your vineyard with two kinds of seed, lest your whole field be forfeited. Probably from the crossbreeding of the seed. I don't know if you guys know about squashes, but if you grow two kinds of squashes together, they will contaminate each other, and you'll get a strange kind of squash. You shall not plow with an ox and a donkey together, because obviously the ox is stronger than the donkey. This is also really important in like when you're thinking about business or friendships or relationships. It's a really important thing to consider if you have an ox and a donkey. um, because sometimes it's really hard to have a really good relationship or friendship with someone if they're a donkey and you're an ox, right? Because you're always going to be dragging that other person along on the journey. And this is where Paul says, don't be unequally yoked. If you're an ox and a donkey and you're yoked on a yoke, right? You guys know what a yoke is? You put it on the animal and the animals are yoked together. That ox is going to be stronger and it's going to pull the donkey in a circle. So if you are unequally yoked or you join yourself in an unequally yoked marriage, you're going to be pulling the other person around in a circle. You guys are going to be spinning circles around each other. You're not going to be going forward. You're constant, or you're going to be dragging the donkey with you, and that donkey's not going to be comfortable. That donkey's going to be annoyed the whole time, right? So you have to have somebody who's got the same vision and goal for you. And if you're trying to date and you're trying to find that person, I think one of the best things to ask is like, what's your vision for the future? What do you want out of life? What does your life look like in the future? What does your ministry look like? What does your purpose look like? Asking those types of questions and making sure that you both have like this common vision or goal in where you want your family to be led to, right? Because if you have somebody, I'll tell you a story. I was courting with a gentleman for a while, and we lived in two different places. He lived really far from me, and I flew to go visit him. He lived in Alaska. I flew up to Alaska to go visit him, and I stayed in Alaska for 10 days. And he was working during that time, and we were, getting to know each other and stuff. And I knew after that 10 days, and that's why I chose to go for 10 days, because I'm like, I want to see how we want to see how we actually live, right? And after that 10 days, it was so clear to me that we don't have the same direction and the same daily goals. Like we were not on the same page at all. Um, and it really became apparent that our lifestyles wouldn't mesh at all. So I think it's just really good to, leave the attractive, like obviously you have to be attracted to the person that you're going to marry, but think too about how does your daily life look together? Like, are you going to be dragging this person to go do things you want to do? Is this person going to be, always trying to change you? Are you always going to be trying to change them? Do you have common goals and stuff like that? You shall not wear a cloth of linen and wool mixed together. So you guys have probably heard about Heidi, or is it Heidi? Heidi, her research that she did. I have her on my Facebook. Let me just see what her name is. I forget her name. Heidi Crawford Yellen. Heidi Crawford Yellen, she did this study with the different frequencies of fabrics. If you want to look at her video that she did, I think this is it here. Okay, so can you see it, the title? This is her video that she made about the frequencies of textiles. I've got it linked probably on my, when I post this video on YouTube, I'll link it. When I post this study on YouTube, I'll link it. But she did a whole study on, let me see if I can open this, where they measured the frequencies of textiles to see. And what happened was they found out that, what happened was they found out that the textiles, linen had a 5,000 frequency, Wool had a 5,000 frequency, but they would cancel each other out because the frequencies had different current patterns. And so the two would cancel each other out and create kind of a jumbled frequency, which was actually not healthy. Now, linen and wool is this understanding of spiritual and fleshly too. So wool is very fleshly, and when we see wool mentioned in the scriptures, often related to flesh, and then we see linen related to spirit, like you put on your linen garments, right? It's like spiritual, your spiritual garments, right? And so it's this understanding of don't mix the flesh and the spirit together. Make sure you're discerning which is which, right? And so she also found out, okay, so organic cotton, I think it was like 110 frequency. Polyester was down at like 10. Like polyester is one of the worst things you can wear. What else did she do? She did regular cotton. Regular cotton was like at 80 or 90, but if you go to organic cotton, it was 110. But the best thing you can do is wear linen and wool, but not together, right? So in the winter, wear your wools, and then the summer, wear your linens. And that will actually heal your body. They used to use linen for hospital sheets. So when you went to the hospital, you would sleep on linen sheets. I've had friends that had really bad arthritis, and they switched to linen sheets, and that actually helped them a lot. It reduced the inflammation in their body a lot. Let's move on to the next one, and we're going to talk about the tassels.
You shall make yourself tassels on the four corners of the garment with which you cover yourself.
So this is the tassels that go on the four corners of the garment, which is called the tzitzits, and you can just look up tzitzits and see those. I want to look this up in Hebrew because there's a lot of debate where the women should wear tassels or whether they shouldn't wear tassels. I have some thoughts on this, but I'm not going to get into them in this study. But I just want to look up this verse in Hebrew though really quick here. Which chapter? 22, Deuteronomy 22, verse 12. You, masculine singular. So this is written in the masculine singular, by the way. You shall make tassels on the four corners of the garment on which you cover yourself, and it's in masculine. Okay, so that means like speaking to the men. But if you go to the other verse where it's listed, it says sons of Elohim or something like that, and the sons could be, it's Ben Elohim, so it could be the daughters or the men or the women, right? If you go to a conservative, so conservative Judaism is less strict than Orthodox Judaism. Okay, so if you go into an Orthodox Judaism synagogue, the women are separated from the men, and they're much more strict. I don't think that the women wear tassels when they pray. Don't quote me on that, I'm not sure. But I know in the conservative, which is less strict than the Orthodox, that the women will wear tassels on their seats, on their prayer shawls. They'll have the tassels on their prayer shawls. So it's kind of up to you. When I was asking Abba about this, and I was praying about it and asking him to explain head covering to me, what he showed me was, okay, so the tassels on your tzitzit, the tassels on your covering, are related to the tent strings on the tabernacle. So it's a picture of the strings that are holding the tabernacle together. Keeping the commandments is like holding the tabernacle together, right? And he was showing me that the head covering is a picture of a woman being covered and under the tabernacle, right? So she's under the covering. So when you wear the head covering, it is that picture of you're coming under and into the tabernacle. So your husband is covering you and he's remembering the commandments. And this goes back to Genesis, right? So in Genesis, what are we told? The husband was given, Adam was given the commandments. He was supposed to remember the commandments. He was supposed to keep the garden, right? So that he was supposed to keep that hedge of protection up around the garden. And the woman was supposed to be under his protection, under his covering in the garden. Okay, so it's that same picture of she's under his covering in the garden, right? So that's why you get the women with the head coverings and the men with the tzitzits. All right, now we're going to go into some more controversial verses. Deuteronomy 22, verse 13.
If any man takes a wife and goes into her and then hates her and accuses her of misconduct and brings a bad name upon her, saying, I took this woman, and when I came near her, I did not find in her evidence of virginity, then the father of the young woman and her mother shall take and bring out the evidence of her virginity to the elders of the city in the gate. And the father of the young woman shall say to the elders, I gave my daughter to this man to marry, and he hates her. And behold, he has accused her of misconduct, saying, I did not find in your daughter evidence of virginity. And yet this is the evidence of my daughter's virginity. And they shall spread the cloak before the elders of the city. Then the elders of that city shall take the man and whip him, and they shall fine him 100 shekels of silver, and give them to the father of the young woman, because he has brought a bad name upon a virgin of Israel. And she shall be his wife. He may not divorce her all his days. But if the thing is true, that evidence of virginity was not found in the young woman, then they shall bring out the young woman to the door of her father's house, and the men of her city shall stone her to death with stones, because she has done an outrageous thing in Israel by whoring in her father's house. So you shall purge the evil from your midst.
Okay, very controversial in today's society. So the implication here is that she would have said that she was a virgin when they were engaged. So being engaged, so she was dishonest. She was dishonest about her past or whatever, or something happened between the time that she was engaged to the time that they got married. Which means that she committed adultery. Okay, because as soon as you're engaged in Hebraic law, as soon as you're engaged, the same thing as being married, because you've made a covenant promise. It's the same thing as being married. So then if you've gone out and done something, you've broken the covenant promise, that is adultery. So the implication of the punishment for adultery applies in this situation. Okay. So they did at that time obviously have a cloth and do the whole cloth thing. If I mean, it depends. Like, women in those days wouldn't be out like doing gymnastics and riding horses and stuff like that. Okay, it was a different time. Women weren't doing those things in that way. But if she knew that she didn't have that evidence still, because she was riding a horse and fell off or something like that happened, she would let it be known what happened, like that, because this was culturally a big deal and this was culturally how things were done. She would let it be known if something had happened, right? I think we'll just leave that there. Let's carry on. We're at verse 22.
If a man is found lying with the wife of another man, both of them shall die, the man who lay with the woman and the woman. So you shall purge the evil from Israel.
Adultery bad, both die.
If there is a betrothed virgin, and a man meets her in the city and lies with her, then you shall bring them both out to the gate of that city, and you shall stone them to death with stones, the young woman because she did not cry for help, though she was in the city, and the man because he violated his neighbor's wife. So you shall purge the evil from your midst. Okay, so she is engaged. She meets a man in the city. He lies with her. This is showing consensual relations, okay? Because if she was in the city, she would have cried out, right? If it wasn't consensual. And it says meets her in the city. It doesn't say he chazaks her, which is violently meets her. There is a different word for when the grape happens. There's a different word, and it's chazak. I can show you this. Let's look at this in the Hebrew though, because I want to make sure, because this that you guys understand this, because this is some of these things that people look at and they don't know Hebrew, they don't know the context, and they twist this.
to not understand. So let's go. If there is, and he meets her, matzah, finds, attains her in the city, and lies with her. Shakav, lies down with her. Okay, so they meet and they lie down, right? He's not grabbing her, he's not seizing her. He's meeting her, meeting up with her, and they're lying down. Okay, she's not crying out. There's not any implication of violence in this verse. She is cheating on her spouse. She's betrothed. She's made a covenant agreement. This is adultery. Okay. We'll go to the next verse. But if in the open country a man meets a young woman who is betrothed and the man seizes her, so now you have chazak, seizes. Chazak is overpower. It means to overpower. So he's now overpowered her. Okay, that's the difference. So, but if a man meets a young woman who is betrothed and overpowers her in a warfare-like sense, chazak is the same word that it's actually a battle cry. So if you're going into war and you're going into battle, the people would say chazak, and we're going into war. Be strong, overpower them. Okay, so now he's violently overpowering her and lies with her. Then only the man who lie with her shall die. But if you do nothing, but you shall do nothing to the young woman, she committed no offense punishable by death. For this case is like that of a man attacking and murdering his neighbor, because he met her in the open country, and though the betrothed young woman cried for help, there was no one to rescue her. Okay. Again, people think that the Bible is anti-woman. This is groundbreaking. So this situation is showing that Yehovah understands that a woman being raped is on the same level as being murdered. It's the same offense. It's the same level offense. If you do this to a woman, it is the same level offense as murdering her. And any woman who's gone through this knows that, right? They know. I don't know why my... Sometimes TikTok has some really annoying features. Lately, it used to be less annoying, but now they have some different features that are more annoying. Like they try to shut down your lives and stuff like that, which is really interesting. Okay, so where was I? The understanding is like, and any woman who's gone through this knows that when you do this to someone, man or woman, because some men have gone through this, it kills them. It destroys them. It's the same level as murder. It kills their life. It kills their life because it puts so much trauma in their body. It puts so much hurt in them that they can't even relate to people in the same way, right? They can't even live in the same way following, right? Okay, so now I want to show you, if you guys are on the Zoom, you'll see this. Deuteronomy 22:28, the word changes again. If a man meets a virgin who is not betrothed and seizes her, tafaz, handles, seizes, seizes her and lies with her, it's not chazak. It's not violently seize, it's he handles her and lies with her, and they are found. Then the man who lie with her shall give to the father of the young woman 50 shekels of silver, and she shall be his wife, because he violated her. He so humbled her, made her, violated her in that he didn't marry her first and then do that, and he may not divorce her all his days. This word seizes is the same word used in Genesis 39:12. Let's go there. Genesis 39:12. As soon as his master heard the words, so this is when I'm up too far. This is when Joseph was seized by the Potiphar, was it Potiphar's wife? Let's go back. Now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance, and after a time his master's wife cast her eyes on Joseph and said, "Lie with me." But he refused, and said to his master's wife, "Behold, because of me, my master has no concern about anything in the house. He has put everything that he has in my charge. He is not greater in this house than I am, nor has he kept anything back from me except you, because you are his wife. Then how could I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" And then she spoke to Joseph after that day, and he would not listen to her, to lie beside her and be with her. So she's trying to seduce him. Okay. So notice that this is all in the terms of seduction. Okay. But one day when he went into the house to do his work and none of the men in the house were in the house, she caught to fast. Same word. Okay. So here it's caught. It's the same word. Seized, handle, use. She caught his garment, saying, "Lie with me," but he left his garment in her hand and fled to get out of the house. As soon as she saw that he had left his garment in her hand, and fled out of the house, she called the men to behold him. Okay, so she was trying to seduce him. It's in this understanding of trying to grab at him and seduce him. Now, this same word is used in when we're looking at this command. If a man meets a virgin who is not betrothed and tafasses her, seizes her, and lies with her, and they are found. So it's this understanding of he's been seducing her, he's been trying to entice her, and she agrees to it, and they lie down together. Okay, that is why in this case it's not adultery, because she was not betrothed to somebody else, but it is he needs. It's kind of like today when people have relations and they get pregnant. Well, not today, but like maybe 20 years ago, and it's like, nope, now you guys got to get married, right? Like, it's this understanding that like you've done the deed, make it right, right? So he has to now become her husband. Again, this kind of it relates back to that whole stoning of the children thing, because having this understanding in place was likely enough. I'm having issues with the Wi-Fi, you guys. I'm wondering if I should log off and come back on. Is the Zoom call clear, you guys? They're saying, can you guys comment on it's clear on the Zoom call? Okay. Yeah. So I'm having issues with TikTok. I'm going to stop TikTok and reload. Let me just pause the recording. Okay, technical difficulties. It's interesting that we're talking about this subject matter and we're having technical difficulties. Okay, so if he meets a woman, that she's not betrothed, meaning she's not engaged, he has to pay the bride price. Now, just like when we talked about the stoning of the children, the fact that the option existed, the fact that it's a possibility, prevented a lot of the children from being ridiculous, right? Now, think about it today. If men knew today that if you seduce a woman and lie to her and seduce her and give her false promises and give her false hope that, about the relationship, just so you can get into her pants, but that you're going to have to marry her regardless, and they're going to have to pay the bride price, and you're going to have to sign a contract and a ketubah, and you're going to have to make everything right. If you know that, because your society is built on that way, that is going to be enough of a deterrent. That's going to be enough of a deterrent to prevent a lot of this stuff that unscrupulous men do with young women when they try to like seduce them and yada yada. That would be enough of a deterrent to stop that behavior, because he knows he's going to have to never divorce her all of his days. He's going to have her as his wife all of his days. So he's not just going to be able to get what he wants and leave, head out the door. It's going to be a different situation, right? So again, one of these, it's kind of like this law would actually, if it happens, it's terrible. This is how you make it right. But at the same time, this commandment is sometimes enough of a deterrent to prevent the behavior from even happening, right? A man shall not take his father's wife, so that he does not uncover his father's nakedness. This is a good key to help you understand what happened with Noah, okay? So when so there is a possibility that when Ham violated and uncovered his father's nakedness, when Ham did that, it wasn't necessarily he was uncovering his father, but he was violating one of his father's wives. That is a possibility of the understanding. So we're going to repeat these just while I play the audio and get caught up, because I read a few of them out loud.
But if in the open country a man meets a young woman who is betrothed, and the man seizes her and lies with her, then only the man who lay with her shall die. But you shall do nothing to the young woman. She has committed no offense punishable by death. For this case is like that of a man attacking and murdering his neighbor, because he met her in the open country, and though the betrothed young woman cried for help, there was no one to rescue her. If a man meets a virgin who is not betrothed, and seizes her and lies with her, and they are found, then the man who lay with her shall give to the father of the young woman 50 shekels of silver, and she shall be his wife, because he has violated her. He may not divorce her all his days. A man shall not take his father's wife, so that he does not uncover his father's nakedness.
Another note about this, okay, so Ham was cursed from doing this. And then also Reuben lost his firstborn rights from doing this. So Reuben went into one of his father's concubines, and then he lost his blessing from doing this as well.
No one whose testicles are crushed or whose male organ is cut off shall enter the assembly of the Lord. No one born of a forbidden union may enter the assembly of the Lord. Even to the 10th generation, none of his descendants may enter the assembly of the Lord. No Ammonite or Moabite may enter the assembly of the Lord. Even to the 10th generation, none of them may enter the assembly of the Lord forever, because they did not meet you with bread and with water on the way when you came out of Egypt, and because they hired against you Balaam, the son of Beor, from Pethor of Mesopotamia, to curse you. But the Lord your God would not listen to Balaam. Instead, the Lord your God turned the curse into a blessing for you, because the Lord your God loved you. You shall not seek their peace or their prosperity all your days forever. You shall not abhor an Edomite, for he is your brother. You shall not abhor an Egyptian, because you were a sojourner in his land. Children born to them in the 3rd generation may enter the assembly of the Lord.
Okay, so this is some difficult stuff, but I want to, okay, so we got Ruth, who is a Moabite. Now, Ruth became an Israelite, and then she was able to enter the assembly. So let's look at, first, we're going to look at Ezra 8. Let's do that. Let's do Ezra 8 first and try to get an understanding of the different moving parts that are happening in this section. I think I have the wrong verse written down. I have the wrong verse written down. Here it is, Ezra 9. It's Ezra 9. Ezra 9:1. After these things had been done, the officials approached me and said, the people of Israel, the priests and the Levites, have not separated themselves from the people of the lands with their abominations, from the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Jebusites, the Ammonites, the Moabites, the Egyptians, and the Amorites. For they have taken some of their daughters to be wives for themselves and for their sons, so that the holy race, the Kodesh race, has mixed itself, Zerah, Kadesh, Zerah, seed, offspring, has mixed itself with the peoples of the lands. Okay, so remember that they were told not to do this. Why? Because then they start to do the practices of the Moabites and the Ammonites and the Hittites. And those practices were they were cult prostitution, they were temple prostitution, they were sacrificing humans, etc. Okay. So don't make it about racism, you guys. That's just weird. mixed itself with the people of the lands, and in their faithlessness, then the hand of the officials, the chief men, had been foremost. And as soon as I heard this, I tore my garment and my cloak and pulled out the hair from my head and my beard, sat appalled. And then all who trembled at the words of Jehovah of Israel, of the Elohim of Israel, because of the faithlessness of the returned exiles, gathered around me while I sat appalled until the evening sacrifice. And at the evening sacrifice, I rose from my fasting with my garment and my cloak torn, fell upon my knees, and spread out my hands to Jehovah, my Elohim, saying, O my Elohim, I am ashamed and blush to lift my face to you, my Elohim, for our iniquities have risen higher than our heads, and our guilt has mounted up to the heavens. From the days of our fathers to this day, we have been in great guilt. For our iniquities, we, our kings and our priests, have been given into the hand of the kings of the lands, and to the sword, and to captivity, and to plundering, and to utter shame, as it is today. But now, for a brief moment, favor has been shown by Jehovah our Elohim to leave us a remnant and to give us a secure hold within this holy place, that our Elohim may brighten our eyes and grant us a little reviving in our slavery. For we are slaves, Aved, servants. Yet our Elohim has not forsaken us in our servitude, slavery, avudat, but has extended us into steadfast love before the kings of Persia, to grant us some reviving, to set up the house of our Elohim, to repair its ruins, and to give us protection in Judah and Jerusalem. Let's carry on. And now, O our Elohim, what shall we say after this? For we have forsaken your commandments, which you commanded your servants the prophets, saying, the land that you are entering to take possession of is a land impure with the impurity of the people of the lands. With their abominations, they have filled it from end to end with their uncleanness. You want to think about this today, okay? Think about Israel today. Israel has Tel Aviv. When the events of October 7th happened at that music festival, those young people were dancing in front of a Buddha statue. Okay, at that music festival, the young people were dancing in front of a Buddha statue, and then the siege happened. Okay, the land is filled with impurities right now. Okay, Tel Aviv has the biggest Pride Parade in the world. Tel Aviv has certain restaurants that, on purpose, just to mock the land and mock the commandments, on purpose, they actually have restaurants in Tel Aviv. There's a restaurant in Tel Aviv that serves a baby goat cooked in its mother's milk, in the actual mother's milk. They made a restaurant to specifically violate that command in Tel Aviv, and they made it a business. Okay, just to be a mockery to the word. Okay, so we are still in that position. That is still going on in the land. Okay, all of those sort of things are still going on in the land. And now think about our lands that we are in. We have similar impurities in the land, but we're in the nation still. So now you have all these. So what's happening with Ezra is, like, all the people have been scattered, but there's a remnant, and the remnant's being brought in. But they have realized that they have taken all these impurities from the land with them. They have intermarried these traditions, and that's why you'll never catch me saying, oh, it's okay to just be really lukewarm about, the pagan traditions that have intertwined into the church. It's okay. It's not, because the pattern of scripture is that is the defilement of the people. That intermixing is actually the defilement that we're supposed to get rid of. And once we get rid of that, that's when we start to get drawn back into a kingdom, right? The abominations came from that the mixing of the different things together. I found this really, really interesting breakdown of, so you know how it says, do not mix with the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Jebusites, the Ammonites, and the Moabites. I don't know why it has Egyptians in here, because Egyptians ended up being a part. So that's probably prophetic in some way. I have something saved. Let me just see if I can grab it. I have this document saved, so just one second. Okay. So this document, I'll put a link to it in the YouTube notes. This document, this gentleman, Thomas Bromley, he was lived from 1629 to 1691. He put together this interesting writing about how the different nations that they were to not join with, that they were to utterly destroy, were each linked to a certain evil spirit. Okay. So he was saying in this document that the nation of the Hittites was signifying spirits of fear and discouragement, false fears, infidelity, earthly wisdom, stuff like this. Okay. If you want to read this whole thing, I'll put it in the notes on YouTube. Okay. And then the Amorites, he's saying they were signifying the bitter, fierce talking and judging spirits, root of bitterness. So when we're looking at this understanding of like, we don't want to join to these things because these nations represent these sorts of spirits that we want to remove from our lives, bitterness and fear. The Canaanites were the merchandising spirits. They trafficked minds, wills, thoughts, senses, imaginations, and affections. And they fetch in buyers and sellers into the temple of the soul. I found this really, really interesting, because a lot of this stuff that goes out in YouTube and social media and TikTok and that, a lot of it is to seduce your mind into thinking a certain way. And it's like they're selling you. They're constantly selling you. Oh, well, this is how this works and this is how that works. And people, they're merchandising these different wills and these different thoughts and senses, right, to entice you into certain things. The Perizzites are the careless, secure spirits. They open the door of false liberty before the crucifying work is done. These spirits labor to take us off of our watchfulness and make us neglect the cross to be secure, and let all manner of evil spirits who oppress the life of the Lamb in us and forsake the way of the cross and continual circumcision. So that's interesting. Sin and self. So false liberty, so sinning and not being circumcised in heart and mind, and cutting away your flesh. So what is circumcision? Cutting away your flesh so that you can walk with Yah closer and know his heart and know why he gives you commands. But instead, you're taking the law of liberty and you're just doing whatever you want, right? So it's a law of false liberty. That's the connection to the Perizzites. And the Hivites are the talking notional spirits that move us to talk of vain and needless things. These awaken vain thoughts and imaginations and fill our fantasy with empty romances and scenes. And so thou our thoughts and imaginations, they press in and bring forth a multiplicity of words and many useless and sinful discourses and disputes, which greatly hinder the springing and growing forth of the divine life. Vain, frothy spirits come from the starry heaven and take their dominion over us. They love reasonings, talks, and debates. They fill us with notions and would have us spend our life and strength talking about high and deep speculations and in unnecessary disputes. I run across this all the time, where people want to have these long and lofty conversations about what time the Sabbath day starts, or their special calendar that was revealed specifically to them, or their special this or their special that. But in, not in the way of glorifying Yah, but doing this in a way of division and debating and endless debating. Not just digging deeper and seeking truth and harmony, but doing it as a way of like, I have special knowledge and you don't, so I'm more special than you, right? That's that spirit, right? And vain, and just like vain debates, constant vain debates. I need to be right. I need to stitch you and be right. I need to stitch this person and call them out. Vain debates, needless debates. Sometimes it's better to just walk away, right? Jebusites, the spirits of pride and elevation. This name signifies to trample upon and despise, that they would be trampling underfoot the blood and the merit of Yeshua and the pride and the might of the fire. They despise the meek and humble way of the cross of Yeshua, elevating themselves above the heart of Yeshua and the power of love. So elevating, having pride and elevating themselves. He writes in kind of that like old-timey English, so it's a little bit hard to read through. The nation of the Girgashites are the earthly, dirty spirits that tempt us and to draw us into earthly life and its vanities, to lusts and excesses in all things, against the law of moderation, purity, and temperance, etc. All these spirits fight in us to their last breath until they are quite destroyed by the powerful resurrection of Yeshua. Very fascinating. Very fascinating to come across this, because it's, if you've gone in through my feast workbook, I talk a lot about the 7 spirits of Yah. And now we have this 7 spirits, the Canaanites, which is really interesting because it kind of mirrors the 7 spirits of Yah, but it's the opposition of, right? So we want to build up the spirit of Yah in us, right? The fullness of the 7 spirits of Yah, which is found in Isaiah 11:1. And we want to not be yoked to these spirits. So as we look at these spirits and the type of things that these spirits bring about, we want to not be yoked to those spirits and start to remove those, right? And so I find it interesting to discover this as we're talking about like who's allowed in the congregation, who's allowed. You can't mix with these spirits. You can't still have these spirits and still enter the tabernacle, right? So there's a spiritual picture there as well. What else was I going to show you? Okay, we're going to go through Ruth, because Ruth was a Moabite, right? So Moabites are not allowed in the tabernacle, but yet Ruth was a Moabite, and from her lineage came Yeshua, right? So let's go, and King David as well, right? So let's go to the book of Ruth, and we're going to see why Ruth was able to become an Israelite. Ruth 1:16. So what's happening is Naomi is telling the girls their husbands died. Naomi's sons died, and they're in Moab. And Naomi is telling the girls after her sons have died, just go back to your land and the Moabites. Okay, go back to the Moabites, be amongst your people. Okay, Ruth 1:15, and she said, "See, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her God." So her sister, the sister-in-law, the one girl that was married to the other brother, goes back to the Moabites. But Ruth said, "Do not urge me to leave you or return from following you. For where you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, Elohim, shall be my God. And where you die, I die, and there I will be buried. May Jehovah do so to me, and more, if anything, more also, if anything but death parts me from you." And when Naomi saw that she was determined to go with her, she said no more. And so the two of them, they went on their way and they came to Bethlehem, right? So they go back to Israel. They go back to Bethlehem. They were in the Moab territory. So if you guys, Moab is kind of like, I can show you. Moab is, just look it up on a map. But it's kind of like south. It's kind of like south and inland. Here's a good map. So Judea was up this side of the Dead Sea, and then Moab's on the other side, the back side of the Dead Sea. Okay. So they are in this territory and they're going to head into Israel. They're heading to Bethlehem. So we can see on this map, you can see on this map, not very clearly. Okay. This is really interesting because, you know, when you start getting into current arguments over the land, like we have this testimony right here. So they're in this area, this Moab area. If you guys want to look, you just join the Zoom call. So they're in this Moabite area, and then they're going to head over to Bethlehem. Okay. But the sister-in-law is going to stay here. Naomi and I don't know which way they went, but Naomi and Ruth head this direction. And when they arrive, people are like shocked to see them. So how was Ruth, a Moabite, able to join and become an Israelite and be part of the congregation? And marry Boaz was that she had levied herself, joined herself, grafted herself in to the Israelite family, just as we in Romans are grafted in, right? We don't bring all the Hittite stuff and the Amorite stuff and all the Jezebite stuff with us when we're grafted in. We separate ourselves from that stuff. So we don't bring our Christmas trees with us when we are grafted into Israel. We are grafted in and we leave that Hittite Canaanite stuff behind, just like Ruth did, right? And so when we look at the New Testament, this is an important understanding, is the picture is the Gentiles are grafted in. It's not a picture of Yeshua is baptizing everything that's unclean and making it clean, as far as the abominations of the nations. He's not taking pork and making it clean for you. He's not taking fornication and making it clean for you. He's not taking lewdness and sin and making sin clean. He's allowing you to join the covenant and be grafted in and learn how to walk in the covenant. Okay, so you're grafted into the root, which is Jesse, which is David, who is Judah, right? So you're being grafted into Israel. You're not a separate thing that gets to baptize Christmas trees and pork. You're grafted in and you're going to learn how to walk in the covenant. That is the picture of the New Testament. And this is really important to understand because as we go through this, we look at Isaiah 56, which we've talked about multiple times, but we'll go through it again. Because what did we just read? Even those who have crushed things, I'm not going to say the word because I'll get censored, crushed things, they're not allowed to enter the congregation either. If you have any sort of thing, you're not allowed to enter the congregation, right? You're not allowed to enter. But if you look at Isaiah 56, we have, thus says Jehovah, keep justice and do righteousness, for soon my salvation will come and my righteousness be revealed. Blessed is the man who does this, the son of the man who holds fast to it, who keeps the Sabbath, not profaning it, and keeps his hand from doing any evil. Let not the foreigner who has joined himself to Jehovah say, Jehovah will surely separate me from his people. So if you are a foreigner and you have been grafted in, you're not supposed to say that you are separate from his people. Let not the eunuch say, behold, I am a dry tree. Now, why is this important? Well, here the eunuch is allowed to join the congregation. The eunuch has been made allowed to join the congregation, right? Because he's decided that he's going to get grafted into his people, right? And if you don't know that understanding of this, a eunuch had been altered. Eunuchs had been altered in order to be of service to the king. So they would alter the eunuchs so that the eunuch could never do what Joseph was, what the wife of Joseph's master was trying to do to Joseph, because these men were around their wives, the king's wives, all the time, right? And if the men were around the king's wives and they had not been altered, the king would be concerned about that man being with his wife, okay? Because they were guards, they were guarding the wives and okay? That's why they had this whole thing where they would medically alter them, okay? This is actually all tying together really interestingly, because we talked a bit today about the wearing of the other person's garments, which often leads to the destruction of the bits. You know what I'm saying? I'm hoping you guys can read between the lines. The destruction of the bits from wearing the garments, you know, that we're doing right now. This has gone out prevalent in society. It starts with the cross-dressing, and then it leads to, if it's not put in check, it leads to the chemical alteration and leads to the surgical alteration. So what is the door that's open first? The cross-dressing, the confusion, the identity confusion, and then we walk in that until we get to this place where we've decided that people get to this place where they've decided that they're going to chemically alter themselves, and then they're going to physically alter themselves, okay? So even those people that have gone to that extreme, if they repent and turn back, they're grafted in and joined into the assembly. Even if they've been made a eunuch, they are grafted in and joined into the assembly. You're never too far gone, okay? And so as Ruth was a Moabite, and a Moabite was not allowed into the assembly, but because she chose to be grafted in, she was allowed into the assembly. So when Christians say that they are Gentiles and they don't understand the scriptures when they say that, oh, we're Gentiles, we're not Israelites. The gospel is about you being grafted in. That's what you're allowed to come and be grafted into the assembly. That's what the gospel is. The gospel isn't stay a Gentile. The gospel is get grafted in and become part of Yah's kingdom, right? What is his kingdom? Israel. So it's just really like, I just don't know what book they're reading when they come to this decision that they want to stay Gentiles. Okay. So Isaiah 56, let's go back there. Let's cover that. Let not the foreigner, Gentiles, who has joined himself to Jehovah say, surely Jehovah will separate me from his people. Let not the eunuch, the one who has been, say, behold, I am a dry tree. Thus says Jehovah to the eunuchs who keep my Sabbaths, who choose the things that please me and hold fast to my covenant. I will give in my house and within my walls a monument and a name better than sons and daughters. I will give them an everlasting name that shall not be cut off. This is a mirror of the Church of Philadelphia, by the way. This is Church of Philadelphia language. What happens to the Church of Philadelphia? They're given a new name. They're pillars in the Temple of New Jerusalem, right? This is mirroring Philadelphia. This is who Philadelphia is, you guys. And the foreigners who join themselves to Jehovah to minister to him and to love on the name of Jehovah and to be his servants, everyone who keeps the Sabbath and does not profane it and holds fast to my covenant, these I will bring to my holy mountain. Okay. It doesn't say those Gentiles who refuse to love his name and be his servants, who argue about, wanting to keep their Christmas trees and pork. It doesn't say that those people are coming to his holy mountain. It does not say that. I know that's very triggering, but it does not say that. It says the foreigners, those who used to do the pork and Christmas trees, but they have now joined themselves to Jehovah and now minister to him and love the name of Jehovah. His name is his expressed image and representation. His name is not just the word that you say. That's using his name in vain. It's his expressed image and representation. It's who he is. When Yeshua comes in the name of the Father, he's coming in the representation of who the Father is. And to be his servants, everyone who keeps the Sabbath and does not profane it and holds fast to my covenant, these I will bring to my holy mountain and make them joyful in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and sacrifices will be accepted on my altar. Prayer is a sacrifice. Prayer is a sacrifice. Your daily sacrifices are your prayers and your petitions and your intercessions. When you do something in a sacrificial way, so maybe perhaps you try to not scroll social media, or you try not to watch worldly things on social media or the television for a while, and you consecrate yourself. That is making a sacrifice. You're taking something and you're putting it on the altar and saying, I'm gonna burn this up. I'm gonna destroy this and not bring it. And I'm not gonna partake in this anymore. But also when you say you have a bit of money come in and you bring that money and you pass it on to somebody in need, or you bless a ministry with it, that's a sacrifice. You're bringing him an offering and a sacrifice. Okay. So we don't have a temple where we do, but we have a temple in here, right? That's where we bring our sacrifices. And they will be accepted to him. Like anything that you're trying to bring to him and say, I'm trying to lay this down for you. And we want to be bringing our best as well, right? Where we want to be thinking about how can we bring the first and the best to his altar first, right? For my house shall be called a house of prayer for all peoples. So you're grafted in, all peoples are grafted in, and then his house is called a house of prayer for all those peoples. And this is in regards to the foreigners who have grafted themselves in, okay? Now that we've gone through this, I'm hoping that this little section of Deuteronomy 23 starts to make more sense. You can kind of see the evolution of the picture. I think we're on verse 9. We'll get into some easier stuff now. Verse 9.
When you are encamped against your enemies, then you shall keep yourself from every evil thing. If any man among you becomes unclean because of a nocturnal emission, then he shall go outside the camp. He shall not come inside the camp, but when evening comes, he shall bathe himself in water, and as the sun sets, he may come inside the camp. You shall have a place outside the camp, and you shall go out to it. And you shall have a trowel with your tools, and when you sit down outside, you shall dig a hole with it, and turn back and cover up your excrement. Because the Lord your God walks in the midst of your camp, to deliver you and to give up your enemies before you. Therefore your camp must be holy, so that he may not see anything indecent among you and turn away from you.
It gets really dry where I live. Everybody's asking, like, why are your eyes red? It gets incredibly dry where I am. It's not very humid at all. And what happens is I just get dried out. Like I'm thirsty all day long. And I have to start the humidifier already because there's no moisture in the air here. That's why you see my eyes start to get red and I start to get really, like, people say it's allergies. Well, it's more that it's so dry here. So that's why. Okay, so these are pretty basic. Like, so say a man has a nocturnal emission. I'm hoping you guys know what that means. Yeah. Okay. He just becomes unclean for the day. So you can't have that happen if you have that kind of a dream or whatever. You just become unclean for the day. You don't go to the temple. You don't go into make a sacrifice. You just go outside the camp. Maybe go have a mikvah in the river and whatnot, but just clean up your act outside the camp. Okay. And then when the evening comes, mikvah, and the sun sets, he can come inside the camp. This is also kind of a clue. This kind of like when the sun sets, come inside the camp. This is a clue that the day starts in the evening. The day ends and starts. That's where the break off is, because whenever you have these commandments where you're unclean until evening, the day changes over in the evening, right? Now it's also saying that if you have to do your business, you go outside of the camp to do your business, and you shall cover up your business. Basically, just keep it clean, keep it clean, folks. In Canada, we had this thing recently where people were not keeping it clean. They were pooping on the beaches. And it was like a whole thing in Canada for a minute this past month where people were going to the beach and they were just doing their business on the beaches. And that's just like a thing. Like, so originally Canada and America were biblical nations. We had biblical understanding of biblical conduct, how we conduct in ourselves. And other nations do not necessarily run in this way. Like if you go to certain countries, people just do their business wherever, right? And as our countries kind of become more and more disheveled and get more homelessness and more kind of just lewdness everywhere in the countries, these things start to come up where people are doing that in the street. Like in San Francisco, people have been doing that in the street for years and years and years now, right? The more this kind of stuff is actually a sign that things are getting really disgusting, right? When people have no place to go, when they are going in the streets and they're not reserved in that way to not do that sort of thing. It's really a sign that things are getting out of hand, Miscellaneous laws. Okay. Verse 15.
You shall not give up to his master a slave who has escaped from his master to you. He shall dwell with you in your midst, in the place that he shall choose within one of your towns, wherever it suits him. You shall not wrong him. None of the daughters of Israel shall be a cult prostitute, and none of the sons of Israel shall be a cult prostitute. You shall not bring the fee of a prostitute or the wages of a dog into the house of the Lord your God in payment for any vow, for both of these are an abomination to the Lord your God.
So this is talking about a slave. So if someone had somebody entrapped in slavery and that slave escaped and left his master, and that slave escaped, then you would take care of him, and you will take care of him like family. Slavery laws, like we went through all the other ones before. So if somebody's an indentured servant, basically they're working for you, they're a slave to you. That means that they were working for you. But this situation is one who has been trapped into servitude. And in this situation where someone is trapped into servitude, that the slave has escaped and he's come to you, this is where you take care of him, you protect him, you help him, you get him on his feet, basically. None of the daughters of Israel shall be a cult prostitute, and none of the sons of Israel shall be a cult prostitute. So they were both doing it. You shall not bring the fee of a prostitute or the wages of a dog into your house. So what is the wages of a dog? The wages of the dog picture there that's a word for a male prostitute, right? So the male prostitute was called a dog in this situation. Okay. You shall not bring these into the house of Yehovah. Basically, don't take dirty money. If you've collected dirty money from somebody, do not bring that into your house, into the house of Yehovah.
You shall not charge interest on loans to your brother, interest on money, interest on food, interest on anything that is lent for interest. You may charge a foreigner interest, but you may not charge your brother interest, that the Lord your God may bless you in all that you undertake in the land that you are entering to take possession of it.
Basically, take care of each other. Your brothers and sisters, you take care of them. And it's interesting that we use the language of brother and sister because, we do that in the church setting. Because you understand that you're coming with a common cause, right? So if you have to lend money to somebody who is your sister or your brother in a kingdom understanding, you understand that you're doing it in a way that you wouldn't charge them interest because you're doing it for kingdom purposes. You're lifting them out of poverty for kingdom purposes. So you're not going to put that interest upon them as well, right?
If you make a vow to the Lord your God, you shall not delay fulfilling it. For the Lord your God will surely require it of you, and you will be guilty of sin. But if you refrain from vowing, you will not be guilty of sin. You shall be careful to do what has passed your lips, for you have voluntarily vowed to the Lord your God what you have promised with your mouth.
Be very, very careful of this. I see people tripping themselves up with this all the time, and they think they're doing a good thing. And a lot of times they do it in really haphazard situations, like they vow that they're not going to smoke cigarettes, or they vow that they're not going to, overeat, or they vow that they're going to fast for 3 days and then they don't make it. Don't make the vow. Just try to do the thing. You don't need to make a vow. Don't make vows to Jehovah, because he will require it of you. So if you make that vow, like, I'm not going to smoke today, I vow to you, da da da. That's just an example, Father. I'm not making a vow. Well, I don't smoke anyway, so it doesn't matter. But but like, you know what I mean? So like, you don't need to make the vow. Just try to do the thing. Okay. Just don't speak that vow out loud. Okay. Vowing is very serious. Just like when people haphazardly get married, like making wedding vows that you're going to be with somebody. The reason that people get married is so that they have somebody that has their back no matter what. And now we treat these marriage vows so haphazardly that we can just get divorced, we could just throw them away, and we could just do whatever. We treat these marriage vows so haphazardly in our society now because we don't understand covenant. We don't understand that you're making a vow to have that person's back no matter what. No matter what happens, they get depression, you've got their back. You guys get broke, you got their back, right? So these vows are very, very important, and both sides. But you need both sides to be in agreement. If one side is not upholding their end of the bargain, the whole thing falls apart. If one side is overspending the money and the other side is trying to make the money all the time, the whole thing falls apart because you're not walking together. You're unequally yoked at that point. And that's why the unequally yoking causes the thing to fall apart. So that's why if you're going to get married, make sure you're equally yoked and make sure you both understand the severity of covenant, the absolute severity of that. You're making a vow before Jehovah. When you're entering a marriage covenant, you are making a vow before Jehovah. It's very serious, right? Still haven't found my tripod, so hopefully this works. Okay. So if you're not prepared to do the vow no matter what, just don't make it, right? Wait until you're ready. Don't haphazardly say things. Okay, next one, verse 24.
If you go into your neighbor's vineyard, you may eat your fill of grapes, as many as you wish, but you shall not put any in your bag. If you go into your neighbor's standing grain, you may pluck the ears with your hand, but you shall not put a sickle to your neighbor's standing grain. Okay, so when people were walking through fields, the sojourners, so who would be walking through fields? Sojourners would be walking through fields. The commandment is to take care of the sojourner and to feed the sojourner and the poor and the widow, yada, yada. So if you are someone who's walking through these fields, you're just eating as you go. You're not harvesting. You're a sojourner. You're just eating to make sure that you're fed. And that is a commandment on both sides, right? So here's a really good example of covenant and understanding the kingdom principles. So if you are in the kingdom, you understand that if you're a sojourner and you're going on a journey, people are going to take care of you on the way because they know that you're a sojourner, but you're not going to abuse their kindness by collecting and putting things in your bag and grabbing stuff, right? And grabbing extra and harvesting their fields. But you're just going to eat as you go. And this takes us back to Yeshua plucking grain and the disciples plucking grain on the Sabbath day. They weren't harvesting grain. They were plucking and eating they're eating as they go. It is the same vibe as if I was traveling and you invited me into your home on the Sabbath day and you fed me, right? You fed me from your garden.
I'm not harvesting your garden, you're feeding me for the day, right? I'm not working by harvesting in your garden. I'm just eating an apple off your tree, right? That's the difference. He wasn't harvesting. They were eating as they go. Okay. Um, it's a really interesting dynamic. This verse is a really interesting dynamic because it's this understanding of taking care of each other, but not being greedy on either side of it, right? Laws concerning divorce. Here we go. 24 verse 1. Before we get into this divorce thing, if any, because I come across this all the time where people are really triggered by talking about divorce. I highly recommend, and I will link it when I post this on YouTube. I'll link it in the comments if I remember. I always forget. I say these things and then I forget. I have to write them down. Link Heidi's video, because by the time I post the video, I've forgotten that I said this. My apologies. Heidi's video and link MTOI divorce video. Okay, so if you are triggered by the concept of divorce and you're confused, maybe you've gone through a divorce or whatnot, you're confused by the different things that Yeshua said about divorce, I highly recommend the video by MTOI Ministries, and it's Divorce, Remarriage, and Putting Away. And he goes through the different language and the different stipulations of what's going on in the context and time. And if you're somebody that maybe you're divorced or you've been dealing with a divorce, or you're a child of a divorced parents or something like that, and you're confused by the divorce language, I would definitely go watch that video because it'll clear a lot of things up for you about what Yeshua is talking about. And a lot of things about what Yeshua is talking about too, he's talking about the bigger picture. He's talking about how Israel was divorced from Yah because of their disobedience and their adultery. So Israel was divorced, right? But then they're brought back into the family, right? So a lot of it is kind of like this metaphorical language as well. But let's go into the divorce laws. Deuteronomy 24:1.
When a man takes a wife and marries her, if then she finds no favor in his eyes because he has found some indecency in her, and he writes her a certificate of divorce and puts it in her hand and sends her out of his house, and she departs out of his house. And if she goes and becomes another man's wife, and the latter man hates her and writes her a certificate of divorce and puts it in her hand and sends her out of his house, or if the latter man dies, who took her to be his wife, then her former husband, who sent her away, may not take her again to be his wife after she has been defiled, for that is an abomination before the Lord. And you shall not bring sin upon the land that the Lord your God is giving you for an inheritance. When a man is newly married, he shall not go out with the army or be liable for any other public duty. He shall be free at home 1 year to be happy with his wife whom he has taken. No one shall take a mill or an upper millstone in pledge, for that would be taking a life in pledge. If a man is found stealing one of his brothers of the people of Israel, and if he treats him as a slave or sells him, then that thief shall die. So you shall purge the evil from your midst. Take care in a case of leprous disease to be very careful to do according to all that the Levitical priests shall direct you. As I commanded them, so you shall be careful to do. Remember what the Lord your God did to Miriam on the way as you came out of Egypt.
Let's stop there because there's a lot to unpack just in these ones. Okay, so when a man is newly married, he doesn't go to battle, he doesn't go to war. He doesn't do any sort of public duty, no jury duty, etc. Not that they had jury duty in that time, but you know what I mean. So that he could just be happy and have that year with his wife to rest and, consummate the marriage and enjoy that time. No one shall take a mill or the upper millstone in a pledge, for that would be taking a life in pledge. What does this mean? So the millstone would be how that person gets their food, mills their grain, likely makes their money. So if you're taking their mill and their upper millstone in a pledge, so say they pledged that for a debt, but you take that, then they can't repay the debt because now they don't have a way to make money, right? So an example of that would be if you owned a business and you needed to have a certain piece of equipment. So say you had a truck and that truck is how you made your money in your business, and then that truck was repossessed, now you can't make any money. So you definitely can't pay the loan back, but even more so, you can't pay the loan back because you don't have a way to make money now, right? So that's why you don't take that and pledge, because you're taking his livelihood from him. This is a really good example of, we're not supposed to have indentured servants and slaves in that way. So you're not supposed to take your brothers of Israel. So stealing one of your brothers of the people of Israel and treats him as a slave or sells him, then that thief shall die, so you shall purge. So it's evil to try to enslave somebody and steal them and kidnap them. Obviously, we know that. But some people twist these verses in the Bible and try to make it about things that it's not. Okay, so this one is really, really interesting. Take care in the case of the leopardus disease, and be careful not to do according to all that the Levitical priest shall be careful to do according to all that the Levitical priest shall direct you, as I commanded them. So you shall be careful to do. Remember what Jehovah your Elohim did to Miriam on the way as she called you out of Egypt. This is really interesting because, number one, we see Yeshua fulfilling this command. So when he cures the man of leprosy, what does he do? He sends him on a long journey, because they were not in Jerusalem at the time, sends him on a long journey to go to the temple and says, show yourself to Levitical priests. Make sure you do this in the proper way. So Yeshua was explicitly making sure that this command was getting done, that you do things in this proper way. So was he preaching against the law? Absolutely not, right? It's interesting because it's connecting it to Miriam. So what did Miriam do that brought leprosy upon her? She spoke out against Moses and said that Moses, she spoke out against Moses and said that they were all, that, you know, that they were all hearing, and they were all prophets in the way. But Moses was hearing directly from Jehovah, right? So Moses was hearing, Jehovah was speaking to Moses face to face, right? And then Jehovah promises to raise up a prophet like Moses, which is Yeshua, right? So when we consider people that are speaking against Moshe and speaking against the commandments and speaking up against Yeshua, could that be something that would bring upon the leopardus disease, right? The flesh-eating leopardus disease. And we see kind of a picture of a leprosy going out in Zechariah 14 as well, which is really interesting. So I wonder too if this is connected with speaking against Jehovah and speaking against Moshe and speaking against Yeshua. I wonder if those are connected. There was leprosy started up again in Florida recently, last year. There was cases of leprosy going out, which is really interesting. All right, verse 10.
When you make your neighbor a loan of any sort, you shall not go into his house to collect his pledge. You shall stand outside, and the man to whom you make the loan shall bring the pledge out to you. And if he is a poor man, you shall not sleep in his pledge. You shall restore to him the pledge as the sun sets, that he may sleep in his cloak and bless you. And it shall be righteousness for you before the Lord your God. You shall not oppress a hired servant who is poor and needy, whether he is one of your brothers or one of the sojourners who are in your land within your towns. You shall give him his wages on the same day, before the sun sets, for he is poor and counts on it, lest he cry against you to the Lord and you be guilty of sin.
This is another verse that proves that, you know, what people look at the slavery verses and they don't understand them, because the hired worker is the servant. Okay, so if you're a hired worker, you're the servant. So if you have a hired worker who's poor and needy and you've hired him to do something, you give him the wages in the same day and you take care of him so that he's lifted up by his experience in working with you, right? There's this whole concept too of like feeding the poor and needy, and like part of that is giving them ways to make money, giving them ways to empower themselves so that they can get lifted out of the poverty, right?
Fathers shall not be put to death because of their children, nor shall children be put to death because of their fathers. Each one shall be put to death for his own sin. You shall not pervert the justice due to the sojourner or to the fatherless, or take a widow's garment in pledge. But you shall remember that you were a slave in Egypt, and the Lord your God redeemed you from there. Therefore, I command you to do this. When you reap your harvest in your field, and forget a sheaf in the field, you shall not go back to get it. It shall be for the sojourner, the fatherless, and the widow, that the Lord your God may bless you in all the work of your hands. When you beat your olive trees, you shall not go over them again. It shall be for the sojourner, the fatherless, and the widow. When you gather the grapes of your vineyard, you shall not strip it afterward. It shall be for the sojourner, the fatherless, and the widow. You shall remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt. Therefore, I command you to do this.
So there's that picture again. So the sojourner's not supposed to harvest your field and take more than they need in the moment, but you're also not supposed to reap your harvest and take everything. You're supposed to leave some behind so that when the sojourner comes through, there's something for the sojourner to eat and the fatherless and the widow to eat. And that's how we get the Ruth understanding. So why was Ruth going out into the field? Ruth and Naomi were poor widows. That's why they're going into the field to collect, to glean the grain, right? And then Boaz saw that and took initiative to feed her and take care of her, and then eventually marry her, right?
If there is a dispute between men and they come into court and the judges decide between them, acquitting the innocent and condemning the guilty, then if the guilty man deserves to be beaten, the judge shall cause him to lie down and be beaten in his presence with a number of stripes in proportion to his offense. 40 stripes may be given him, but not more, lest if one should go on to beat him with more stripes than these, your brother be degraded in your sight. You shall not muzzle an ox when it is treading out the grain.
Okay, two interesting things here. So they had kind of that corporal punishment type thing going on, which we don't do nowadays, as far as I know, anywhere. I mean, maybe in some Middle Eastern countries they do it, but or maybe some Asian countries too. I think some Asian countries still do that, but it's like you don't overdo it. You do enough and then you don't overdo it, right? Because you don't want to degrade the person in that way. And that makes me think about Yeshua and how horribly he was degraded in that whole process, right? Completely, utterly degraded, right? In no worse way could you do it, right? So, and then the last one, you shall not muzzle an ox while it's treading out the grain. Like basically, if somebody is doing the work or your animal is doing the work, you're not going to starve that animal and make life difficult for that animal while they are doing that work, right? So that they can't eat the grain, you're going to have compassion. That animal is working, and you want to have compassion on it, that it's going to be hungry because it's working hard, right? All right, we're going to get into some, yeah, we're almost done. Okay, so this is kind of a big topic too. There's a lot of really big topics today that we kind of need to touch on. It's kind of it's a big section here. So we're going to talk about the Levirate marriages. Let's go.
If brothers dwell together and one of them dies and has no son, the wife of the dead man shall not be married outside the family to a stranger. Her husband's brother shall go into her and take her as his wife, and perform the duty of a husband's brother to her. And the first son whom she bears shall succeed to the name of his dead brother, that his name may not be blotted out of Israel. And if the man does not wish to take his brother's wife, then his brother's wife shall go up to the gate to the elders and say, my husband's brother refuses to perpetuate his brother's name in Israel. He will not perform the duty of a husband's brother to me. Then the elders of his city shall call him and speak to him, and if he persists, saying, I do not wish to take her, then his brother's wife shall go up to him in the presence of the elders and pull his sandal off his foot and spit in his face. And she shall answer and say, so shall it be done to the man who does not build up his brother's house. And the name of his house shall be called in Israel, the house of him who had his sandal pulled off.
Okay, so this is obviously very triggering for our current, world. Because people don't understand the actual heart and understanding of this. We've gone through this before when we talked about Judah and Tamar. But basically, the command is this understanding that, the wife, the husband dies without having heirs, so his name is going to be blotted out. his name will not go forward and his memory will be blotted out because he doesn't have heirs, right? And so this understanding is that the wife also gets to stay within the family that she already knows. She already knows this family. She's already living with them, right? Instead of having to go out and find another family and to try to get remarried or go back to her other house, she stays within the family. Now, these were very different times. Obviously, everybody lived together in these families. Everybody had they lived and worked together, and it was a very tight unit. So, first of all, unless she was extremely beautiful and extremely desirable, if she's already a widow, it's going to be very difficult for her to find another husband, right? In those days. Today, not as much, but in those days, it was very, very difficult if she was not one of the virgins of Israel to get remarried or have to find another husband is going to be very difficult for her, okay? Also, she would have to leave and try to make it out on her own or return to her father's. So the understanding is that she gets to dwell with them, and she also needs heirs because she needs somebody to take care of her in her old age, right? As people age, they need their children to take care of them, especially in those days. Not so much now because we have social structures that, but even then, like if you end up in an old folks home and you don't have a child to be an advocate for you, a child to make sure that you're getting proper care, you could be in a very difficult position, right? So also the woman needed her own children so that she would be taken care of and she would still be in a good position, right? Also to carry on the lineage of the dead brother. So you're honoring his name when you're carrying this on. And this is all implicit that the woman wants this. If she doesn't want it, because again, it's covenant, they're going to get married, it's covenant. If she doesn't want this, she's still free to go back to her father's house or whatever, right? And this is where we get the understanding of what's going on with Tamar and how Judah was not acting right. Judah was not doing the right thing with by Tamar. This will also give you a better understanding of what's going on with Ruth as well. But we're not going to get into that today. I think we'll just leave that there. It was a disgrace for a man to not be willing, because it was an act of love and act of love and compassion for him to provide for her heirs, for him to continue his brother's name. It was a noble thing for him to do. And so it was a disgrace if he was unwilling to do it. It was frowned upon because he's not doing the noble, righteous thing. Okay. So hopefully that makes it make more sense in our modern context. We don't think about these things, right? Now we're going to go into miscellaneous laws. We're at verse 11.
When men fight with one another, and the wife of the one draws near to rescue her husband from the hand of him who is beating him, and puts out her hand and seizes him by the private parts, then you shall cut off her hand. Your eye shall have no pity.
Okay, so why so strict on this? Because she's potentially going to damage his ability to have a lineage. Lineage and the carrying on of your name was and is extremely valuable and extremely important in this society. And when you are doing that, obviously it's inappropriate to do that, but it's also, you could be damaging his ability to bring forth children, right? Very, very bad. And think about that, in a woman's perspective. If a man came at you or a woman came at you and tried to damage your ability to give birth or damage your organs in any way, that would be horrifying, right? It's the same thing when women try to do it to men, obviously. And I shouldn't have to say that out loud, but I kind of feel like in this day and age, you do have to explain that to people. Okay, moving on.
You shall not have in your bag 2 kinds of weights, a large and a small. You shall not have in your house 2 kinds of measures, a large and a small. A full and fair weight you shall have, a full and fair measure you shall have, that your days may be long in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. For all who do such things, all who act dishonestly, are an abomination to the Lord your God.
Okay, so what is this about? They would have a scale. They put grain on one side and they put the weight on the other. And then this is how much grain you're purchasing or whatever you're purchasing. This is the amount that you're purchasing. And then they would have weights that were hollowed out or are trick weights that would not weigh as much. So the person was not getting as much of the product as that they were thinking that they were getting. So that's what dishonest weights and measures are. Our whole society, our whole financial society is based on unequal weights and measures now. Our entire financial system is based on unequal weights and measures. When you buy a dollar, when you earn a dollar, you earn a dollar, right? Because that's not backed by anything. It's not backed by gold anymore. That dollar, the value of that dollar can be changed. Our entire financial system is unequal weights and measures. Okay. So when they print off fake money during a scamdemic, what is happening is they're devaluing your currency. Every time that they print off fake money and hand it out, every time that they hand out fake money to whatever group they decide to hand out fake money to, because it's all fake now, it's worthless, it's paper. It's only worth, as long as they keep the system in place, is the only amount of time that that money is going to be worth anything. The second they pull the plug, that money is going to be worthless. Okay. If they can, I mean, that's in God's hands, right? That's in Yah's hands. So you go to your job, and you go to your job for 20 years and you save up a certain amount of money so that you can retire, so that you can do certain things. And what the people in charge do, the people that are presenting themselves as in charge, Jehovah is in charge, but the people in charge of the monetary system, what they do is they go and they create disasters, and then they print money and they devalue your currency. So that dollar that you worked for now is worth 80 cents, right? Or 50 cents or 60 cents, because it cannot buy what it used to be able to buy, because they have devalued your currency. They have done unequal weights and measures on you. They have duped you into working for a dollar that's no longer worth a dollar, right? And that is an abomination to Jehovah, and they will pay for it. At some point, enough will be enough, and it's gonna be enough, and he's gonna say enough is enough. And so when you think about the slavery, so how the Israelites were in slavery in Egypt, right? A lot of people now are in modern day slavery. They're working for these dollar bills, and the dollar bills keep shrinking. The value of the dollar bill keeps shrinking in front of their eyes, right? And they're in this perpetual slavery, right? And at some point Jehovah is gonna return, and he's gonna he's gonna release the captives from all of this, right? Going on to verse 17.
Remember what Amalek did to you on the way as you came out of Egypt, how he attacked you on the way when you were faint and weary, and cut off your tail, those who were lagging behind you, and he did not fear God. Therefore, when the Lord your God has given you rest from all your enemies around you, in the land that the Lord your God is giving you for an inheritance to possess, you shall blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven. You shall not forget.
Such an interesting line, because it's like, you shall blot out the memory of Amalek, but don't forget that you're going to blot out the memory of Amalek. It's kind of like a contradiction. So a lot of this that we've just gone through is about the lineage and about the seed going forth, and about how you're going to blot out the name. So when the man does the appropriate thing and marries the dead brother's wife, he is allowing that man's name to be carried forth, right? Allowing his lineage and his memory to be carried forth. But when we look at Amalek, it's cutting completely off. We're going to cut off Amalek's name forever, so that it will not be remembered, right? So you're cutting off the lineage, you're cutting off the ability for Amalek's seed to go forth, right? Was Amalek in this thing that we were going through? Amalek, do we have it in here? No. What nation was Amalek in? Canaanites? Amalek. Oh, they're an Edomite tribe. Amalek, the sons of Eliphaz, the son of Esau, was counted among the chiefs of Esau. He was one of the heads of the families of the tribes of Edom. Hence, the Amalek people were an Edomite tribe descended from Esau. There you go. So that particular tribe, so not all the sons of Esau, not all the tribes of Esau were cut off, but that particular tribe, and it says here why, doesn't it? They attacked you when you were faint and weary, cutting off your tail and those who were lagging behind you and did not fear Jehovah. So when the people were faint and weary, attack them from behind. And that's why Amalek, the memory of Amalek, will be blotted out from heaven. I feel like we're contradicting when we're like looking up who Amalek was, because we're not blotting out their memory when we do that. So maybe we shouldn't do that. But then I also feel like we have to kind of understand, right? So Isaiah 54, we're going to get into today, the eternal covenant of peace. I'm going to take a quick break and I'll be right back. So give me 5 minutes and I'll be right back, okay? Okay, let's get into Isaiah 54. A really important understanding of Isaiah in this section is to understand Isaiah 51 to 56 and look at those sections and kind of the events that are happening, okay? So Isaiah 52, you have kind of this moment where the people are being told to cleanse themselves and refine themselves and be set apart. And then you have Isaiah 53, which is famously connected to Yeshua, and Yeshua doing the work of the cross. And now we're into Isaiah 54. So we're talking about the covenant. And then we're going to go through this process, and then we end up in Isaiah 56, which I touched on Isaiah 56, which is all the people on the holy mountain. Notice that order, okay? And then if you go from Isaiah 56 to Isaiah 66, you have the whole trajectory of the coming in of the kingdom. Isaiah 65 and 66 is the day of Jehovah, the day of the Lord, right? So if you go from Isaiah 53, Yeshua, to Isaiah 65 and 66, you have this picture of a timeline from Yeshua's work on the cross, the people being joined in, grafted in Isaiah 56 after Isaiah 53, and then you have how the kingdom's going to come in. And you can look at how those pieces come into place as you look at Isaiah 56 to 66, right? Does that make sense? So you could sit there and you could kind of map out the events through that process. And you can kind of get a timeline of like how things are going to unfold. So now we're at Isaiah 54. So Isaiah 54 is obviously after Isaiah 53. The work on the cross of Isaiah 53 of the servant being lifted up, right, and doing that, pierced for our transgressions, has happened in Isaiah 53. And now we have the internal covenant of peace in Isaiah 54. Okay.
Sing, O barren one, who did not bear. Break forth into singing and cry aloud, you who have not been in labor. For the children of the desolate one will be more than the children of her who is married, says the Lord. Enlarge the place of your tent, and let the curtains of your habitations be stretched out. Do not hold back. Lengthen your cords and strengthen your stakes. For you will spread abroad to the right and to the left, and your offspring will possess the nations and will people the desolate cities. Fear not, for you will not be ashamed. Be not confounded, for you will not be disgraced. For you will forget the shame of your youth, and the reproach of your widowhood you will remember no more.
Okay, quick notes. Okay, so who's the barren one? The barren one is Israel. Okay, so Israel was barren because they had been forced into dispersion and whatnot. But now it's saying, come in, be part of, be part of what's happening. Enlarge the place of your tent, right? Make your habitations, because there's going to be so many more added unto you, right? Your offspring will possess the nations and will people the desolate cities. So the offspring are going to go out and possess the nations and the desolate cities. We're at verse 5.
For your Maker is your husband. The Lord of hosts is his name. And the Holy One of Israel is your Redeemer. The God of the whole earth is called.
Okay, so this is that husband language. So this is all metaphorical language. Often you'll hear Israel referred to in metaphorical language. You'll hear Israel referred to as daughter of Zion, or you'll hear Israel referred to as a woman in labor, right? All of these different kind of metaphorical pictures, and it's to help you to understand kind of the more spiritual, deeper image. Okay, so your Maker is your husband. He's okay. So husband, what is a husband? I'll show you that in Hebrew. This is really, really good in Hebrew. Isaiah 54. Oh, this one is Baal. The Maker is your Baal. So your Maker is the one who rules over you. This is actually really interesting play on words, because I know people get really triggered by the word Baal. We've gone into it. Baal means husband. It means whoever's lording over you. So when they say when it's kind of used in a bad way, in an idolatry way, it's like these fake idols are ruling over you. Okay, for your Maker is your husband, Baal. The Lord of hosts is his name. The Holy One of Israel, your Redeemer, Gal. So your husband can break your bad vows and your bad promises off of you as well, right? And that's that picture of your husband can redeem. The husband can redeem the wife. The husband can cover the wife and cover her sin, right? We see that in Genesis. I want to show you the other word for husband, though, and it's in Genesis 2 something. Because the picture of the husband is a really important picture. Okay, so we look at man, which is Adam. Okay, man. So man, when you look at man in Hebrew, Adam, it's this picture of from the dirt, from the earth. So very ruddy, just like Esau was very ruddy and earthly, and he was very earth-minded. He was always thinking about the things of this world. That's why Esau is called ruddy. Adam is this ruddy understanding of a man. So like a beast-like nature is the Adam nature. Okay. Now, when we go through Genesis, you'll see that moment where it's actually still translated to man, but it's a different word in Hebrew. So first Adam is called a man, right? And then later on, if we go to Genesis 2:18, so he's still being called a man here, and then in 2:18, and then there was not a helper fit for him. So Jehovah caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, right? Okay, here we go. So in verse 23, then the Adam said, "This is at last bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh, and she shall be called woman because she was taken out of man." But the man there is not Adam. It's not Adam, it's Ish, right? And then even Genesis 2:24, therefore it's not Adam, it's Ish. I think I'm saying it right. Ish. Therefore an Ish, a man, but Ish doesn't mean the same thing as Adam. So Adam's like this ruddy kind of earthly understanding of a man. But when you get into, he's met his wife, right? And he's been joined with his wife, there's a new understanding of what he is, okay? And so now we look at this word for man. And this is why the English a lot of times just really doesn't do. I want to look it on Blue Letter Bible because I know that translation is so good. Blue Letter Bible. You guys can look this up on Blue Letter Bible too, because you probably have that resource. Let's look it up on Blue Letter Bible. I really like their translation there. Therefore, and
Strong's 376. Ish.
I was saying right.
Ish.
Therefore, an Ish, which translated into man, it's not Adam, it's a different word for man. So if you look at the outline of biblical usage, it's a husband, a servant, a champion, a great man, right? Ish, connected to 52582. An individual or male person, often used as a more definite term. A champion, a footman, a fellow, a great or good mighty man, a high degree of a man, a husband, a steward, a man is whosoever is worthy, right? What's this word? That's female, that's the other one. So it's a different picture of man. And so it's translated into man in the English a lot, and then it's translated into men sometimes. And then it's translated into one sometimes, which is interesting, and husband, okay? Husband quite a few times as well. Whereas if we go, let's look at the root word of this though, actually, just curious. The root word is a mortal, a husband, a servant, a stranger. Okay, and so then let's look up Adam, and I'll show you the difference. I'll show you the difference in when we look at Adam, which is the other way that man is translated, the other word that's often translated to man. Adam, H120 on your Strongs. Man, Adam, person, common sort, hypocrite. Translated to hypocrite one time as well. Man, mankind, mankind, Adam, first man. So very like basic, like just a man, right? And then where you get the Ish, you got this picture of a steward, like it's an upgrade, you know what I'm saying? And so it comes from H119, ruddy, an individual, hypocrite, common sort, a low man, low degree of person, okay? So when we see that Adam there, it's that picture of the low degree. And then once he starts to become this protector provider picture with his wife, his ability to care and cover her elevates him as a man, right? It makes him, and anyone is in a godly marriage understands this, right? When you have that godly marriage and the man is able to encircle and protect, then he brings out the best in the wife, but then she also brings out the best in him. That you know, him becoming a servant to her. And just like Yeshua's a servant and a covering to us, the husband is a servant and a covering to the wife, right? Yeshua sanctifies us right? By covering us and us walking with him and canceling our bad vows, canceling our sin and our debt from sin, right? And he's a husband to us. He redeems us in that picture, just like a husband, like an earthly husband, could cancel the woman's bad vows if she makes a bad vow. In Numbers 17, I believe it is, he can cancel those things off of her. He can, he can cover her and protect her in that way as well, right? So it's a beautiful picture. Now, when we look at Isaiah 54, your maker is your husband. Your maker is your Lord and your husband. He's the one that's going to cover you, and you're going to, you serve him, right? He's going to be your redeemer. I think we're at verse 6.
For the Lord has called you like a wife deserted and grieved in spirit, like a wife of youth when she is cast off, says your God. For a brief moment I deserted you, but with great compassion I will gather you. In overflowing anger for a moment I hid my face from you, but with everlasting love I will have compassion on you, says the Lord your Redeemer. This is like the days of Noah to me. As I swore that the waters of Noah should no more go over the earth, so I have sworn that I will not be angry with you and will not rebuke you. For the mountains may depart and the hills be removed, but my steadfast love shall not depart from you, and my covenant of peace shall not be removed, says the Lord who has compassion on you.
So we have that understanding. When we look at that understanding of who the husband is, it makes that picture make a lot more sense, right? That picture of the husband and the wife interacting, just as Yeshua and us interact, right? I want to touch, before I go into Matthew 24, I want to touch on, with great compassion, I will gather you. Jerusalem. Let's go to Matthew 23 first. So we're looking at this. For a brief moment, I have deserted you, but with great compassion, I will gather you. That's Isaiah 54:7. And I want you to just look at the language here in Matthew 23:37. This is Yeshua speaking. Jerusalem, O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it. How often I would have gathered your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you are not willing. See, your house is left to you desolate, for I tell you, you will not see me again until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of Yehovah. So what is coming in the name of Yehovah? Coming in his image and representation, right? So not coming in your own name, a name that does away with the commandments, does away with the image of the Father, but knowing the image of the Father and coming in his expressed image and representation. This is why many in Judah don't recognize Yeshua as Messiah, because most Christians are presenting a Yeshua that does not come in the name of the Father. They're presenting a Yeshua that comes in his own name, in Jesus' name, right? They're presenting a Jesus that does away with the commandments of the Father, that belittles the commandments of the Father, that mocks Moses, that puts tainted meat in their vessels. They're presenting that Jesus who comes in his own name instead of the one who comes in the name of Yehovah, right? And that is a very subtle, well, it's not that subtle to us who get it, but it's a very distinct difference, okay? So blaming Judah for not seeing Yeshua or Jesus as their savior is really out of order if you're presenting Jesus coming in his own name and you don't understand that he needs to come in the name of the Father. You're the one in error. If you're presenting the gospel to a Jew and you say he's done away with the commandments, he's made all foods clean and all this stuff that we've gone over in other videos, you're presenting a false Messiah to them. You're not presenting the image of Yeshua who comes in the name of Yehovah, because that when he comes in the name, he comes in the exact image, right? All right, so here's that language too. He wants to gather the children together. So Jerusalem is not just the place. It's not just the place on a map. It's the people. Jerusalem is the people. We know this from, and he wants to gather his people together, right, to Mount Zion, Isaiah 56. This again is Philadelphia language. Revelation 3. This is Philadelphia language. Everyone is gathered to Zion, Philadelphia language. They're made pillars in New Jerusalem, right? All right, back to the portion. I think we're on Matthew 24. Matthew 24, verse 29.
Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then will appear in heaven the sign of the Son of Man, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send out his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. From the fig tree learn its lesson. As soon as its branch becomes tender and puts out its leaves, you know that summer is near. So also, when you see all these things, you know that he is near at the very gates. Truly, I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. But concerning that day and hour, no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but the Father only. For as were the days of Noah, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. For as in those days before the flood they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day when Noah entered the ark, and they were unaware until the flood came and swept them all away, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. Then 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken and one left. 2 women will be grinding at the mill, one will be taken and one left. Therefore, stay awake, for you do not know on what day your Lord is coming.
Okay, so I've heard people kind of tweak this and say that it's not the good people that are taken. But you know what's interesting? If you put it in context, I just noticed this, if you put it in context with the section that it's in, he just said that he's going to send out his angels in a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the 4 winds. That is the context of this section, right? He's gathering the elect from the 4 winds. And so on that moment, when no one knows the day or the hour, right, that some people think is an idiom for trumpets, could be. That could be meaning that it's referring to the Feast of Trumpets. But in that section, he's saying these are going to be the ones that are going to be taken, and then the flood is going to come and sweep them all away. Okay, so when I read this just now intellectually, I know people have come up with this doctrine that like it's the evil people that are taken away, but it doesn't paint that picture here, because you have the elect being taken up first. You see that in when the angels go out to gather the elect from the 4 winds, right? So that's the elect being gathered up. Then it's about the timing. So learn the lesson of the fig tree. You know it's coming soon with the lesson of the fig tree. And then you look at the day or the hour, no one knows. And then all of a sudden, the people are taken. Okay, so the context of this section is the elect are taken, right? So that kind of, for me, it kind of dispels that idea of the evil are taken. That doesn't really fit in this section logically, right? The other thing I want to note is that when this happens, people are living life. So it's not that the world is an absolute disaster and nobody can function. It's not in that, the world is not in that state when this event happens. When this event happens, they're eating, drinking, marriage, giving in marriage. They're doing all normal life things. And that's the world we live in now. Yes, there's tribulations happening in this world, but there's still people that are just fine, and life is just going on for them, normal, right? So, and they were unaware. So they're not being tribulated to the fact to the point where they're aware and they know what the hour is, right? They don't know the parable of the fig tree. They're not paying attention to the signs that we're paying attention to. They're just living normal life. And that's very much how the world is right now, right? So it's not depicting that the world is in chaos when this happens, right? Which I find also interesting. Do you guys know the fig tree stuff? I think you have. Just look it up. Like the fig tree stuff is pretty easy to understand, how that all works. We won't get into that today. All right, let's call it a day for the recording. I'm going to stop the recording. And if you guys want to talk about anything else, type it in the chat.